Health and others safe. And to all the women and men working here at the Public Health Agency and in teams right across the country, thank you for your outstanding service. Since March, Canadians have been working around the clock to keep each other safe. And together, we've come up with innovative solutions to meet an unprecedented challenge. A few weeks ago, I announced that our government was working with the Government of Ontario, BlackBerry, and Shopify volunteers on a new app to help slow the spread of this virus. As of this morning, the COVID Alert app is ready to download through the App Store on your phone. Right now, it's connected to the Ontario health system, but we know other provinces will be joining in soon. So people across the country can and should download it today. This is another tool to protect your health. Here's how it works. The app will let you know if you've been in contact with someone who has the app and has tested positive for COVID-19. If that's the case, it will then encourage you to call your provincial health services for guidance on what to do. I want to be clear, this app isn't mandatory. It's completely voluntary to download and to use. And it doesn't collect your name, your address, your geolocation, or any other personal information. I've downloaded the app this morning, and I encourage you to do the same. The more people use it, the better it can trace and therefore slow the spread of the virus. In fact, health experts say that if enough people sign up, this app can help prevent future outbreaks of COVID-19 in Canada. I know that Premier Ford will have more to say about this Made in Ontario system, but I want to thank him for his partnership in getting this program up and running. We're working hard with our Atlantic provincial partners to integrate their health systems into the app next, and at the same time we're in discussion with other provinces, and we expect that they'll be coming on board soon as well. Depuis ce matin, vous pouvez télécharger la nouvelle application Alerte COVID dans l'App Store de votre téléphone. En ce moment, l'application est connectée au système de santé
is connected to the Ontario healthcare system, but we know that other provinces will still be coming online. Across the country, people can and should download the app for free today. The app will let you know if you have been in contact with someone else who has the app and who has tested positive for COVID-19. If that happens, you will be directed to health authorities in your province, and they will explain what to do next. This is another tool that we are making available to you to protect your health. No one is obliged to download the app, but the more people use it, the better it will work. In fact, healthcare experts are saying that if enough people use it, that could even help to prevent future outbreaks of COVID-19 in the country. I downloaded it myself this morning, and I encourage you to do the same thing as soon as possible, as soon as today. The app will not be collecting your name, address, geolocation, or any personal information.
Since the start of the pandemic, our government has worked hard to keep Canadians safe while getting people the support they need. Of course, we know there's still more to be done, so today we're taking yet another step forward. This morning, I can announce that our government is investing almost $59 million to protect the health and safety of migrant workers on Canadian farms. This will fund more farm inspections, provide emergency relief when needed, and improve the overall living conditions on farms. We also know that help is needed right now in many locations. Currently, thanks to the $100 million investment we announced in May, the Red Cross is helping the most at-risk workers in the Windsor-Essex region in particular. Ministers Qualtrough, Bibeau, and Mendicino are also looking at ways to improve the temporary foreign worker program as a whole. This includes measures like developing mandatory requirements for better living conditions for workers so that we can continue to support and protect the people who keep food on our plates. Que vous soyez étudiant,
Whether
ou que
you're a
vous cherchiez
student
une job
or
à temps plein,
you're
il y a
seeking
beaucoup
employment
d'opportunités
full-time,
en ce moment
there are
dans le
many
secteur de
opportunities right now
l'agriculture et
in
de
the agriculture and
l'agroalimentaire.
agri-food
Les gens qui
industry.
travaillent dans ce domaine
People who work in
nourrissent
that
nos
area
familles,
feed
ils
our
remplissent
families
les
and
étagères
keep
de
our
nos
grocery
épiceries.
shelves
Si ça
stocked.
vous intéresse,
If you're
je vous
interested,
encourage à aller
I
chercher
encourage
l'information
you
à propos du
to
programme.
find out
Mettez la
some
main à la
information
pâte
about the
sur le
program,
site
which is available on the site agr.gc.ca. I also want to talk to you about what we're doing to support workers and businesses all across the economy. First of all, we know that for many businesses, paying rent after months of losing revenue is not easy to do. In the spring, we brought in the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program that makes it possible to reduce small businesses' rent by 75%.
Employees have benefited from the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance. People who've been able to keep their jobs because of the help businesses got through this program. And we know there are even more people still to reach. And that's why we are officially extending the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program for the month of August. Today, I also want to speak about what comes next for the millions of people who still rely on the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. In the weeks ahead, we'll have more details about what will come after the CERB. But to people who need this program, don't worry, no one will be left behind. Our goal is to transition everyone on the CERB to employment insurance, because EI should cover every Canadian who's looking for work. And for those who don't qualify for EI right now, like gig or contract workers, we will create a transitional parallel benefit that is similar to employment insurance. It will include access to training and being able to work more hours and earn more money while receiving the benefit. That's only appropriate as our economy reopens and brings back more jobs. There will also be a sickness and caregivers benefit for Canadians not covered at work if they get COVID-19 or if their kids or parents get it and they have to take care of them. We'll have more details to share before the end of August, but here's the bottom line. We intend to cover every Canadian who is looking for work with a better 21st century EI system. That is our goal. And of course, there will be no increase to EI premiums during this challenging time. Notre but, c'est de transférer
Our goal
tous
is
ceux
to
qui
transfer
reçoivent encore la
everyone
PCU
currently
au régime
receiving the
d'assurance
CERB
emploi.
to the employment insurance
L'assurance
system.
emploi devrait couvrir
Employment
tous les Canadiens
insurance
qui
should
cherchent
cover
du
all
travail.
Canadians
Et
who
pour
are
ceux
looking for
qui
work.
n'y auront
And
toujours
for
pas
those
accès,
who
comme les
won't have
travailleurs
access
contrats,
to
on va
it, such as
créer
contract
une
workers,
prestation de
we will be
transition
creating a
similaire à
transitional
l'assurance
benefit
emploi.
similar to
Cette prestation
EI.
va notamment
That
prévoir un
benefit
accès à la
will
formation,
provide
permettre
access
aux
to
gens de
training and
retourner
allow
au
people
travail
to
et de
return
gagner
to
plus
work
d'argent
and
tout
earn
en
more
recevant
money
les
while
prestations.
continuing to receive the
On va aussi
benefit.
créer
We
un
will
programme
also
de prestations
create
de maladie
a
et de
sickness and
prestations aux proches
caregivers
aidants.
benefit for
Si vous ne
family
pouvez pas travailler
caregivers.
parce que vous
If
êtes
you
malade,
cannot
si
work
vous
because
prenez
you're
soin de
ill
quelqu'un,
or if you're
on va
caring for
encore
someone,
être là.
we will still be there
On va
for
avoir
you.
plus de détails à
We will have
partager dans les
additional
semaines à venir,
details to
mais
provide
voici
in the
ce qu'il
coming
faut
weeks.
retenir.
But this is the
On a
important
l'intention
thing.
de
It is
couvrir
our
tous
intention
les
to cover
Canadiens qui
all
cherchent du
Canadians
travail
currently looking for
grâce
work
à un régime
through
d'assurance
an
emploi
improved
amélioré
EI
et
system
adapté
that
au
is
21e
suitable
siècle.
for the 21st century.
Évidemment,
And of
pas
course,
question d'augmenter les
we will not
cotisations
be
à l'assurance
increasing
emploi durant
employment
cette période
insurance
difficile.
premiums
Merci.
during this difficult time. Thank you. I'm now happy to take your question.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll start on the phones. Just a reminder, one question, one follow-up. Operator?
Thank you. Merci. Première question, Hélène Buzetti, Le Devoir. À vous.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau.
Good
J'aimerais
morning,
revenir
Mr.
à votre
Trudeau. I'd like to
témoignage.
come
Vous
back
avez
to your
dit,
testimony. You said yesterday that you didn't know that Mr. Morneau had traveled under the auspices of we. Could you tell us whether it was a good idea? Do you think that when you're the Minister of Finance in a G7 country, you should take your hat off and go and engage in this kind of travel? Well, I think there are a lot of people, whatever their job, who are interested in helping and supporting organizations organizations who are doing great work around the world. I know that this is a situation where people have questions for Mr. Morneau, but as far as I'm concerned, seeing people, whatever their job, who get involved in their community or wanting to help out and make a difference, not just taking personal travel, but helping and supporting important causes around the world, well, I think people understand that generally that's a good idea.
Obviously, there's questions for Mr. Morneau that he has already addressed, but the idea that someone on their personal vacation would choose to support a good cause or get involved in helping make the world a better place is not something that we should reject or turn away from. I think a lot of people in a lot of different jobs are always looking to see how they can make an even greater difference in helping people around the world, and that is certainly something that we should remain open to.
Donc, j'en comprends, Monsieur Trudeau, que vous n'êtes pas choqué par ce voyage.
I understand that you're not shocked by that travel, but there are a lot of people who are asking Mr. Morneau to resign in a context where we're talking about a deficit of $350 billion. Do you intend to make a change there? First of all, let me say that, of course, as Mr. Morneau has already said, it was a mistake for him not to refund or reimburse the costs of that travel, and he apologized for that. But let's remember that the work we have done, and particularly the work done by the Minister of Finance in recent months to help millions of Canadians in an extremely tough situation, continues to remain our priority. As I announced today, we will continue to be there for people who need help in this time of uncertainty. Even as the economy starts to reopen, we know that there are many people that still need our help, and we will continue to work for them.
As Mr. Morneau himself highlighted, he apologized, and he should not have accepted the elements of that were gifts. But at the same time, the work that we're doing, the work that he has done as finance minister and continues to do in being there for Canadians, as I talked about today, the ability to continue to be there for the millions of Canadians through the CERB, through the wage subsidy and other programs while we continue this pandemic. Even as we're seeing the economy reopen in many ways, there are still millions of Canadians who are looking for work and for whom there are no jobs. And we need to continue to stay focused on doing that work to keep Canadians supported through this historic pandemic.
Merci. Prochaine question. Operator.
Next question, operator.
Thank you. Merci. Prochaine question. Mélanie Marquis, La Presse. À vous.
Good morning, Mr. Trudeau. Still about yesterday's testimony, why did you not see the red flags that were very clear on May 8th and go ahead and approve the cabinet decision? Well, what I saw on May 8th prompted me to push back against this program and to say, well, if that is the recommendation of the public service to move forward with the We Charity, then it was essential to ensure that that was the right decision and it could be justified. Now, those red flags that I saw prompted me to say, okay, let's slow it down, let's do some additional checks and make sure that this is in fact the only organization that can deliver this kind of program. And I wanted to ensure that everything was done according to the rules. That was my response. Now, as I said a few weeks ago, it would have been preferable for me to step away from that decision and that I not even take part in the discussion. But instead of that, I decided to push back and to force more checks. Now, obviously, I regret having made that decision because now we're in a situation where that program is in difficulty.
As I said, when I received the information on May 8th that the public service was recommending We Charity to deliver this program, I pushed back. I said, let's make sure that indeed this is the only organization that can deliver this program, that everything about this program is, tightly buckled down, that we know exactly that it's the right program, that the public service are absolutely confident that this is the only way to go forward with this program. As we know now, and as I look back in hindsight, it would have been better that instead of pushing back and asking for extra verification, I had simply removed myself entirely from the discussion. I regret not having removed myself from the discussion, but pushing on making sure that it was the right program was something that was done for the right reasons and in the right way.
Melanie?
Follow-up, Mélanie?
Oui, donc vous avez demandé
Yes, now you asked them to make additional checks, you wanted the public service to do its due diligence. But at the same time, did you think that this might cause problems, or did it not occur to you? Well, my concern about that organization and the entire situation, in fact, prompted me, instead of removing myself from the discussion, pushing back against the decision to make sure that everyone did the necessary checks and verifications in addition to what they'd already done. I wanted to ensure over the weeks that followed that they had, in fact, checked out everything, done the necessary follow-ups, and that they were very confident about their recommendation that only that organization could deliver the program. And as I said, I trust the public service. They are extraordinary, and during this pandemic, they have delivered program after program, new programs that have never been seen before, that were very effective in helping millions of Canadians, and in a flexible and creative way.
As I said, when I heard that this program was being chosen to deliver the CSSG, I pushed back. I should have, in hindsight, pulled away and said, I don't want to be involved in this at all. I shouldn't because of family connections. Instead, I said, whoa, let's put the brakes on. Let's check. Let's go do extra verifications. Obviously, hindsight is always 20/20, and I wish I had recused myself instead, because this program is right now not delivering the support to students who are volunteering across the country. But I asked the public service to really dig in, to triple check. I asked the ministers to triple check to make sure that we could confidently say that this truly was the only program that could, the only organization that could deliver this program in time for this summer. And when the answers came back that yes, indeed, it is absolutely the only program that could do it, I allowed it to go to Cabinet for an up or down decision. Either we have this summer grant program through WE organization, or we do not have a summer grant program at all.
Thank you. And we'll take one more question on the phone. Operator?
Thank you. Merci. Next question, Alex Ballingal, the Toronto Star. Line open.
Good morning, Prime Minister. After those red flags came up for you when you saw the proposal on May 8th, between May 8th and the 22nd when Cabinet approved it, did you or your staff go to the Ethics Commissioner and ask about your family's ties to WE and if this was a problem? Did you discuss that at all in that time frame with the Ethics Commissioner?
No, we did not. As I said, the Ethics Commissioner had already cleared my wife for working in an unpaid basis with the WE organization through a podcast and through events where they covered her travel-related expenses, but did not pay her. That was already pre-cleared by the Ethics Commissioner.
A follow-up, Alex?
The due diligence that you asked for in that time, did any of it address your worries about a perceived conflict, or was there anything that was done to address that, or did you ultimately decide that the program was worth overlooking your worries about a perceived conflict?
The due diligence, extra due diligence I asked for was about really being able to stand in front of Canadians and in front of critiques from the opposition that were undoubtedly to come because of this program's links to me and to a number of members of my government, that this was the right recommendation made independently of any of those issues. The due diligence I pushed on was in order to make sure that this was indeed the right program, the only program only way to be able to move forward with the program.
Hi, Prime Minister. Tom Parry, CBC. On the app, what's the holdup for getting other provinces to buy into this, and do you have a timeline for when this is going to be a national program?
Excellent question. First of all, the app is something that we have developed in partnership with Ontario. There were a number of decisions we had to take. We had to wait for Apple and Google to update their operating systems so that they could do the Bluetooth handshakes in the background that the app relies on. Many of the other apps tried in other jurisdictions like Australia and Singapore required a level of activity in the front of your phone that meant even people who downloaded it didn't, often use it to its full capacity. So we were reliant on the operating systems to be updated. As that happened, we then worked with experts from BlackBerry and Shopify and others to make sure that the code was right, did a significant amount of beta testing, and now Ontario is ready to move forward. It's our largest province. They have done extraordinary work in creating those links with their public health system. Across the country, now what is needed to happen, and we're looking at the Maritimes next and a number of other provinces that are working very hard to align with this, is they have to make sure that their provincial and territorial public health agencies have the ability to give to anyone who tests positive a code that they can then input into the app so that the system knows that their phone has tested or they have tested positive. Again, this is a situation where I would want to know, people will want to know if someone who they came in contact with over the past few days suddenly tested positive. They don't need to know who, and there's no privacy information shared in this. But you will know if someone you were in proximity with over the past 2 weeks has suddenly tested positive for COVID, you'll get a notification that says you should now call your local public health agency and ask for guidance on the next step. But in order to be able to do that in each province, we have to coordinate with the local public health agency to do that. And that's what we're working on now that we have the system up and running in Ontario, in our largest province. It will hopefully be up and running for local public health agencies right across the country in the coming weeks.
En français.
Okay. Pour l'application,
when it comes to the app, we have been working with in Ontario to develop it. We had to base ourselves on the work done by Google and Apple in order to allow the Bluetooth connections to happen automatically without there being a need for the user to worry about that. That has been done now, and once the beta testing had been carried out, which it has, we are now able to launch the application right across Canada with maximum functionality in Ontario because the Ontario health system now has the ability to give anyone who tests positive a code so that the app can share the fact that there was a positive test. Now, as I said, there will be no sharing of personal information whatsoever. A person who tests positive will, through this code in the phone, be able to advise other people that he may have had or she may have had contact with in recent weeks that person has tested positive. So once again, it provides for absolute protection of personal information and makes it possible for people to make the choice of helping their community and to know if they have had any contact with someone who has tested positive. So we are currently working with the other provinces. We expect that the Atlantic provinces will be joining in very soon, and we're also working with all the other public health authorities in the provinces and territories so that they can benefit from all the functionality and help their own citizens.
You said yesterday it's unlikely you're going to be able to roll it out this summer. So is the program now dead? And if it is, what are you going to do to help the students who are relying on it, and what are you going to do with the money that you'd set aside for it?
First of all, we continue to roll out massive supports for young people, for students across the country. The Canada Emergency Response Benefit for students gives $1,250 a month to many, many, many students across the country, and indeed more help than that to students with dependents or living with disabilities. On top of that, we've created more jobs for the summer jobs program. We've done a deferral of student loans. All these things are continuing to support. What will not happen so far with the CSSG, and I know the minister is still working on ways of delivering this grant, is that young people who are right now busy volunteering across the country in many different organizations will not, unfortunately, be able to get credit for the work they've done volunteering that would have led to $1,000 up to a $5,000 grant because of their volunteerism. That is the element that's not happening so far, and we are still looking at ways that we can coordinate, oversee, and deliver the, grants like that to students. We're still looking for it, but at the same time, just because the grants aren't flowing doesn't mean that young people are not stepping up in a myriad of ways across the country to contribute to their communities and to support Canadians. Okay. Nous avons entrepris beaucoup de mesures pour
We
aider
have
les
introduced a
étudiants.
great many
La
measures to
PCU
help
étudiante,
students.
par exemple,
The
qui
Student
donne
Emergency Response
$1,250
Benefit that
par
gives
mois
students
à des
$1,250 a month and is helping thousands of students, and even more if those students have children or are living with a disability. We also created additional support measures in terms of more grants. We added jobs to the Canada Student Jobs Program. So we continue to support young people. But thus far, we have not been able to provide the $1,000 to $5,000 to students who are helping out in their communities. But the fact is that there are thousands of young people who are already volunteering actively this summer. They're already helping out in their communities. But with the delays associated with this program and the problems with that will not be able to deliver it, we are looking at challenges in terms of rewarding those young people at this point. But at the same time, there are many, many young people who are still serving their communities.
Prime Minister Mike Blanchfield, the Canadian Press. What exactly did your staffer, Rick Teese, tell we on May 5th that led them to believe that it was actually okay for them to start spending real money on a volunteering plan that hadn't yet made it to Cabinet?
This was the conversation, as I understand it, between Rick Teese and we was a very quick conversation in which he mostly referred them back to ESDC. As the Kilburgers said a few days ago in their testimony, they made the decision that if the program was going to be delivered, they should start doing work even before it was approved by Cabinet. That was a decision that they took because they knew how important it was to get this program out, and they assumed certain risks in going forward and starting to spend on a program that hadn't yet been approved by Cabinet and would not be approved for another few weeks, particularly because I put the brakes on it a couple of days later. But it was a decision that they took. Given the pandemic situation, all timelines have been compressed. People are having to step up. They felt it was a good enough program that they were willing to take the risk of starting work even without the formal approval. But that was a decision they took because they believe deeply in helping young people and creating opportunities for young people who want to serve. Okay. The
conversation between Rick Teese and we individuals was a very brief one. They talked about the importance of working with ESDC to develop the program. However, a few days ago, we heard from the Kilburgers directly that they made the decision to move forward and to start working on the program even before it was approved by Cabinet, because they wanted to get young Canadians out there helping their communities. So they took on that risk. It was a decision that they made, but it also was a perfectly understandable decision given the pandemic and their commitment to young people in Canada.
Mullen, Global News. To follow up on some of the earlier questions, Prime Minister, through the due diligence performed by the public servants between May 8th and May 22nd, you asked for more info so you could be confident we was the only option to put the program forward. But knowing about your family's connections and potential conflicts, what specific information or due diligence was provided that made you confident by May 22nd that you didn't need to recuse yourself?
My ask of the public servants and of the minister was to absolutely make sure that what they were suggesting was the hard and cold truth, that there was no other organization that could deliver this program, that the delivery of this program was going to be successful, that this was the right organization for it. I asked them to go back and recheck their work to make sure that they could stand confidently and say, this is our recommendation, it is the right recommendation, and that was the request that I made. And when they came back to me in that intermediate time and gave me the solid assurance that it was the absolute certainty for the public service that this was the only way to deliver the program, and it was the right way to deliver the program, I was willing to let it go to Cabinet on May 22nd.
But your concerns about the personal connections that your family had and potential conflicts?
Well, the concerns about the personal connections that my family had were all around perception. Were all around the fact that it was known that the WE organization was something that I had done work with, that my family had done work with, and therefore we needed to make sure that the public service and others could stand up and say, no, the decision to go with WE was because they are the right organization to deliver this, and indeed the only organization to deliver it. And that's where I pushed back, because I knew there would be perception issues around this. At the same time, delivering a grant program to students who volunteer across the country has absolutely nothing to do with any work my brother or mother did with WE, and that's why there was no conflict of interest. But the perception issue meant that I wanted to push back and really make sure that everyone could say without a shadow of a doubt that this was the program recommended, the way to deliver the program recommended by our outstanding and professional public servants. Je sais que
I knew that there could be some questions raised because of the connections between myself and the WE charity, and that is why I asked the public service to recheck and to confirm that they had done all the background work that needed to be done, and that this organization was the only one that could deliver this program, and that they were perfectly confident about that, because I knew there would be questions because of the connections between my family and WE. So I wanted to ensure and be 100% certain that the public service, which is professional and independent, would be able to confirm that there was no other way to deliver the program other than with WE. For me, that was a way of countering those concerns, political in nature, and people's possible perceptions, because if there's no other way of delivering the student grant to young people who are volunteering in their communities, well, the fact is that there was no one who was going to benefit from it, neither my mother nor my brother, who have been working with WE for several years.
CTV National News. We went from being a charity, the only charity, as you said, to be able to handle this giant student portfolio, to taking a huge reputational nosedive and losing massive corporate sponsors. Do you take any responsibility for that?
I deeply regret the situation that has unfolded here. This is not how anyone wanted this to happen. This was a program designed to support young people who are volunteering in their communities and give them grants for those volunteer service hours. As we've seen, there are still thousands upon thousands of young people actively volunteering in their communities, but they won't be able to get that grant that is a recognition and, in some cases, an encouragement for them to step up as volunteers. The challenges that have followed for the WE organization, and indeed the questions that have been asked of this government, have been disappointing because it gets in the way of the help that we've focused on doing for young people. We're not able to deliver this grant as of yet, although we're still working on trying to figure out a way to support young people who are volunteering. And the WE organization that has done excellent work over the past years in empowering young people and getting young people active in their communities, running clubs in almost every elementary school and high school, or many elementary schools and high schools across the country. Has been extremely effective in empowering young people and getting them to volunteer. Obviously, the situation that has flowed from this is deeply regrettable, and I am deeply sorry that I didn't recuse myself from the beginning. It possibly could have avoided much of this challenge. Instead, I chose to push back and ask for extra due diligence, but that wasn't the right choice, obviously.
Prime Minister, today you announced $59 million for protection of farm workers. I think about the people that have already lost their lives on Canadian soil. I know that Canada doesn't have a financial responsibility to those families. Is there any help for them? I mean, these are people that died bringing us food, and I know that some of them had to repatriate their bodies and pay for it themselves.
I think we look at the tragedies that have hit the temporary foreign workers community with deep sorrow. This is something that is on Canadians. We require support from people from around the world to grow our food, to harvest our food, to get food on Canadians' plates. And we've seen that there are multiple levels at which, in some cases, we have let those communities down. Whether it's the farms that haven't been living up to the standards and expectations that we expect, or provincial governments or federal governments that haven't been properly involved in ensuring that standards are met and that people are protected. There are lots of changes we need to make, and we need to continue to work on supporting these people and these families as they support us with good food on our tables. I
think we really have to reflect on how much we owe all of these foreign workers that come into the country to help us to put food on our tables. We have a system that has shown some failures, whether it's the federal or provincial management of the program. The fact is we need to improve the program because these people who are coming to feed Canadians have to be protected. So we did announce an investment today, and we will continue to work with various organizations and with workers and provinces and territories and the agricultural industry to ensure that there is adequate protection and adequate support for these workers who are so important to all of us. Thank you all very much.
You watched it live here on CBC News Network. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in Ottawa announcing a new tracing app that Canadians can download to their smartphones. And so that is news. Also some money, as you just heard in that last question, for migrant workers. I want to tackle that and more with CBC's Janice McGregor, because she's been following all of this from our nation's capital. Certainly there is much to talk about regarding questions over the Prime Minister's testimony yesterday. But let's begin with the news, Janice. What are the details?
So the Prime Minister in his statement today had updates on several fronts in terms of his government's pandemic response. First, I'm going to start with the thing he mentioned at the end of his statement, the future for people who have been relying on the CERB, the Emergency Response Benefit. Of course, as summer comes to a close, there has been a great deal of uncertainty about what would happen for people who still were without an income, had not been able to return to their jobs. And the Prime Minister today saying that they will not leave anybody behind, that the intention of his government is to transfer anyone who hasn't been able to go back to work onto what he called a 21st century employment insurance system. He said it would not just be for people who qualified for EI previously. It would seek to cover everybody through some kind of a parallel coverage, that it would include also people who needed sickness benefits to allow them to stay home or to care for other people during COVID-19. That, I think, is something that we're going to hear more details on closer to the end of the month, but the Prime Minister wanting to get some signals out there to try and reassure people that the tap won't be turned off completely at the end of the summer. The other big thing he was announcing on the money front is a new $59 million investment from the federal government to help with the situation with temporary foreign workers on Canadian farms. We know there have been some serious issues with their living conditions, with their health during this pandemic. I believe 3 in southwestern Ontario have died, and people have been raising concerns about whether these workers who come to Canada to help with harvest are really treated fairly once they arrive, given what they do for our food supply here. This new money is going to fund inspections, help out with emergency relief, and interesting, they said it would improve living conditions. Now, I'm not sure exactly how they're envisioning doing that, but he did mention that the ministers responsible for this program, the employment minister, the agriculture minister, and the immigration minister, were working on changing how this program is going to work going forward, having mandatory requirements for better living conditions for workers. And you heard him say there that the system has shown some major failures and that it was clear there is a need to improve this program. As you mentioned, they are also announcing today that they are finished with the beta testing phase for the new COVID-19 notification app, that if you are in Ontario, the ministry there is now equipped to be able to input data into this system so that if you do test positive, they can give you a code, and then people whose phones have been in proximity to yours can find out not your name or where you're from or where they were in contact with you, but just the fact that they have been in proximity with someone who has gone on to test positive, so they know to keep an eye out for any symptoms of their own. That is something the federal government is still working on, trying to roll out elsewhere, possibly in Atlantic Canada next, we understand. But in the meantime, it is up and running in Ontario, which has been a partner on this project right out the gate. So that was kind of the main thrust of, I guess, the message he wanted to get out there. But of course, Suhanna, as you heard, the questions were all about the WE controversy.
Absolutely. And he stuck to the line, his comments during that testimony that he pushed for further due diligence before We Charity was awarded that work. What did you make of his answers, Janice?
Well, I thought they were remarkably similar to his testimony. Any efforts to use these questions from journalists today to get him kind of off kind of what his message was yesterday, I'm not sure were terribly successful. I was interested in his answer about the future of this program. He seems to be confirming that there won't be payments for students who have been out there volunteering this summer, which could be a disappointing appointment to people who began volunteering in good faith, believing that it would result in some help to cover their costs this fall when they go back to school. I also was interested to hear him talk about how much he deeply regrets this situation. Of course, he has been apologizing for this, but, saying he deeply regrets what unfolded here. And emphasizing again, he knows he should have recused and that could have avoided the situation, but also saying that he found it disappointing that so many questions were raised about what he really thought was a good program. The whole reason he pushed back was because he felt there could be a perception of conflict of interest and more due diligence needed to be done on this. And yet he's saying it's disappointing that so many questions were asked when it actually went forward. I found that to be interesting for something that they knew was going to be closely scrutinized. That was their testimony yesterday.
Thanks for that, Janice. CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Also want to give you an update on some of the news coming from Ottawa regarding travel across the border with the United States. As you know, anything but essential travel or only essential travel can happen. And that deadline, which was to have ended in the end of July, has now been extended to the end of August. So no travel across the border to the United States just yet unless it is essential. That deadline has been extended by 1 month. There are some new freedoms, however, for more than 4 million people in Ontario. They include dining indoors